Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs. Want to start off today's show by just saying, thank you to everybody who showed up to the watch party yesterday. It meant a lot. I know it wasn't how we all wanted it to end, but I do really appreciate everybody for pulling up. I had a great time rooting on the Texans, and I know it sucks. I mean, it sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I mean, we're all still Texans fans. We love this team. I ride with this team, and I'm just happy that, our guys went out there and, gave an effort that I could at least be proud of. The defense played awesome. Stroud played, a gutsy performance. Yes, there was mistakes. We'll talk about all that here coming up. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the game and, what the Texans should do from here. But honestly, I'm excited for this team next year. It's disappointing. It's going to hurt, the rest of the playoffs, not seeing the Texans being able to, advance, go to the AFC Championship game for the first time and, advance on. But, there's not much we can do here. But, hey, we're on to the offseason. Well, you got to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because Texans, they still have 6 draft picks. They're only missing their 6th-round pick. They have, according to Bleacher Report, $14.1 million in projected cap space. Not a ton, but they do, you always have that wiggle room. You can make moves. You can do different things. A lot of, guys we've got to, make decisions on. Free agents I'm just looking at right now, Mario Edwards Jr., Folorunso Fatukasi, Eric Murray, who's basically the starting safety towards the end of the season, Robert Woods, Stefon Diggs, a lot of guys who you got to make decisions on here in the coming months. So, like I said, make sure you hit that sub button. We'll be breaking down everything in free agency during the draft, during the trade period, everything around the Houston Texans, breaking it down here on the channel. So, okay, my thoughts on the game. So, obviously, if you were with me yesterday, I was not happy with the officiating. The officiating sucked. It sucked, but I'm not going to be that guy that said the Texans lost because of the refs. There was bad calls, sure, and I'm sure if you're a Chiefs fan, there's probably some bad call that they didn't do on the Texans, that, or whatever. I'm not going to blame the refs for the loss. At the end of the day, the Texans had a chance to win this game. 4th quarter, they were down by 8, and they had the ball. They were not able to, sustain a drive, make anything happen on that drive. And honestly, the Texans' 2 biggest weaknesses came to light on that drive, where the Texans were down by 8, 4th and 10. We all saw Stroud get up to the line with, 4 seconds left on the play clock. One of the 2 biggest weaknesses that the Texans have had all year is Bobby Slowick and his play calling and inability to get the plays in to the offense. I mean, 4th down. You need this down more than anything. I would have rather, and maybe this falls on DeMeco a little bit too, I would have rather the Texans just taken a timeout there and made sure they had a play call that was good for them. Because Stroud getting up to the line with 3 seconds left, clapping his hands, calling, literally no one was ready. No one was ready for him to hike that football. And then, what happened? Schultz just lets a guy go right by him, right in Stroud's face before he even gets a chance to set his feet. So, that was a huge call, and not being able to have the play call in, have the offense get ready, get up on the line, and actually look at the defense before they run the play call. There was no way that play was ever going to succeed as soon as they came up to the line of scrimmage, because like I said, they only had 4 seconds left on the play clock. So what are you supposed to do if you're CJ? What are you supposed to do if you're this offensive line? You literally are putting your hand in the ground, looking up, and calling hike. You don't even get to see who's in front of you, what front they're in, how you're going to block it. You have no clue, because you don't even have time to ID the defense if you're an offensive lineman or CJ Stroud, if you have 2 or 3 seconds from when you get out of the huddle and then your hands in the dirt. That was a huge miss. And I don't even know if I put it on the offensive line in that instance, but 2nd and 3rd down I can, because the other biggest issue with the Texans has been blocking the blitz and protecting Stroud. And that is exactly what the Chiefs did on that drive. Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, just sent blitz after blitz after blitz because he knew the Texans couldn't pick it up. The O-line could not, make sure they had everybody covered. They There was always a free rusher. The Texans offensive line, every single time there was some misstep where they let a rusher go, or the blitz was not picked up correctly, either by them or whoever the running back it was in the backfield, or CJ Stroud making sure the offensive line was, going one way or the other, IDing who the mic is and where the blitzers are coming from. The Texans just could not do that at all this year. And those two things are really, at the end of the day, why the Texans lost this game at the end of the game. I mean, there's obviously other contributing factors. Kaimi Fairbairn missing, 3 field goals doesn't help at all. I thought I can't really complain much about the defense. The defense played lights out, holding Patrick Mahomes to 24 points in a home playoff game in the divisional round. The only thing I can think of is the linebackers were somewhat soft in coverage, and Kelsey kind of ate up the middle of the field against them and Miles Bryant. But, we were not expecting Miles Bryant to shut down Travis Kelsey. And Azeez Al-Shaair, really good. Leader of the defense. I'm glad we had him out there, but I don't know the extent of his knee injury, how bad it was, but him in the middle of the field playing that zone, that didn't help either. So, there's a lot of contributing factors to why the Texans lost this game, but I'm not going to say it's on the refs. I'm going to say, the refs, they did have something to do with it. The refs, I think, made some awful calls at the end of the day, but the Texans lost this game, and they need to get better. They need to get better this offseason and try to, build off of this season what they had, learn from their mistakes, and come back stronger next season. So I have 2 things the Texans need to do moving forward, what they should do to start the offseason. Before I get into that, got to tell you about our sponsor over on Prize Picks. Get started today. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there. I know, won some cash yesterday. I went with, the Stroud more on the passing yards, knew that was going to be good. The Stroud rushing yards after last week, I knew that was good too. So I won 2 separate lineups with those 2 projections helping me out. And I know the Texans aren't in it. And if you're like, I don't even know what to root for in the playoffs anymore, put on a lineup on one of these playoff games. It's playoff time. Exciting games going on. We have right now, it's halftime of the Eagles Rams game right now I'm watching, and we have obviously Bills Ravens tonight. So if you're like, hey, I don't know what to do, or the college football national championship tomorrow, if you're like, I just want to watch these games, make it a little bit more exciting, get started today with Prize Picks. Get started and use our promo code CLNS. $50 instantly when you play $5. Use that code CLNS. You don't need to win. It's guaranteed. Get started with our friends over at Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay, let's get into the back half of the show. 2 things that I think the Texans need to do to start the offseason. Number 1, you need to figure out your future at offensive line. Which guys are you going to trade, cut? Which guys are you going to, keep in there and possibly want them to start next season? Because I'm looking at the list of Texans offensive linemen, and I see a ton of question marks going into the offseason, into next season. Kenyon Green, he got injured, came back to practice, came off of IR, but we never saw Kenyon Green again after that Jets debacle on Halloween. Shaq Mason, he was injured. He came back into this playoff game. I don't know if that was the right decision because he did not look good on multiple plays. And, Shaq Mason, since the Texans got him, he's been awesome. But this has easily been the worst year of his career, I would say. After looking back at, Shaq Mason's work throughout his time here, with the Buccaneers, with the Patriots, I would say this would probably be his worst season of his career, and he might tell you that same thing too, because he's been really good. Did not have his stuff this year. Scruggs was starting at center, starting at right guard. What did they do right before the playoff game? Scruggs on the bench. Jarrett Patterson, the guy who they drafted 4 rounds later than him, he's starting at center over Scruggs. So a guy like that, do you try to maybe use him as some sort of trade bait to get some more draft capital, or do something along those lines if you don't see Scruggs as a future starter on this team? And Tytus Howard, I think I really like Tytus Howard. I think he really always does what's best for the team. I know he didn't want to move into guard. He wanted to stay at tackle, and I think we would all agree. I think Tytus Howard is a better tackle than he is a guard. But with Blake Fisher starting at right tackle, with going into next season, what does this Texans offense want to do? What does this coaching staff want to do with the offensive line? Do they want to keep Tytus Howard in at guard and Blake Fisher starting at right tackle, or do they want to kick Howard back out and then Blake Fisher maybe bump inside to right guard or have him be the swing tackle still? I'm not sure what they want to do with that. I'm not going to put Laramie Tunsil on this list yet. I think they should still rock with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. I mean, you saw he had so many penalties this season. Still recognized for how good he is at left tackle as a pure pass blocker. He is an amazing pass blocking left tackle, even with the penalties. And I will say, I think a lot of those penalties, there's some on Tytus Howard, but there is something to be said with the amount of inexperience on the interior of this offensive line and all the false starts that started the season. Those two things, those are linked with him and the penalties and the inexperience and the play of this offensive line. It's a unit. And I think he took a lot of the blame for that, even though, there was, certain times where it was on him. I think he took a lot of the blame on other instances where it was maybe some miscommunication along the offensive line. So that's number one, though. Number one thing you got to figure out this offseason to start the offseason is what you're going to do with some of these guys on the offensive line. Do you keep them? Do you cut them? Do you trade them? What do you want to do, and where do you want to go with this offensive line? Because you cannot run it back next season. You need to at least have 2 new starters on the offensive line next season, I would say, to make Texans fans, to make people comfortable, and to actually, elevate CJ's game, because he took a step back this season because of this offensive line. And getting into CJ Stroud's game, I think the second thing you got to do if you're the Texans, I've been defending him a ton. I've been, I haven't wanted to get on the, fire Bobby train, but I think it's time to move on from Bobby Slowick. I think he's very talented, and I honestly do think Bobby Slowick will be a good coach in this league for a long time. But he has a lot of maturing to do. And if we're in win now mode, if this is the time that the Texans want to, take that next step going into the next season and say, hey, we're not just happy, say, hey, we got it to the divisional round, but we lost to the Chiefs. We want to say, hey, we need to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs and make it where, it's not a 9.5, point underdog or, whatever. You need to have it to where people are like, the Texans have a very good chance to win this game, which I think the national media, everybody did not think the Texans had any chance to win this game. I think the Texans played very well. The defense played lights out and gave them a chance to win this game. But at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes in this Kansas City squad was more talented than the Texans. And they need to figure out how to put some more talent around CJ, not only on the outside with the wide receivers, but also up front, because I think him and Joe Mixon can be a great quarterback running back duo. We need some guys up front to protect these guys. And we need a play caller who can make adjustments. And I think a play caller who can learn from his mistakes. I think a lot of the times Bobby Slowick in this offense, it was kind of like watching, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and expecting different results. I think, a lot of the times with some of the things that are in this offense, Bobby Slowick just didn't want to get off of it and didn't want to evolve and didn't want to, try to change up the scheme or change up things going on and really simplify things. And I think that hurt the Texans a lot throughout the season of, being very predictable. I think, running out of that, running out of those 12 packages where it's 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and running, a ton of the time in that, and not even running just on, 1st and 10, but also 2nd and long, like making it to where you can't get 3rd and manageables. Like I said, I'm not, gonna fully, not the guy that's gonna pull out the film and break it all down for you right now. Like, I think there's a lot of really good Texans content creators that are out there that can do that for you as well. But at the end of the day, like, I think you don't have to be a genius to realize I don't think Bobby Slowick's the guy for this offense. They took a major step back, and we'll see if DeMeco, if this front office, they trust in Bobby Slowick to get better this next season, because I'm not sure that's the right move. I think they should look for a better play caller, look for somebody with a little bit more experience to help this Texans offense really, catapult onto the next level. We've seen what happened with the Ravens after they, Greg Roman wasn't working out there. What do? They went out and hired Todd Monken, and this offense looks insane. It looks awesome. So I think the Texans might need to move on from Bobby Slowick. I think that's what they should do at the end of the day. This isn't an indictment on Bobby Slowick. I think he could easily go somewhere else, be an offensive coordinator, and be successful in this league. I really do think that. I just don't know if he's ready to be an offensive coordinator on a championship team. And that's the difference. If the Texans want to be a championship team and say, we are championship contenders, I don't think Bobby Slowick's the guy for that. That's just my opinion, but hey, just wanted to get on here day after, gave it about 24 hours to kind of digest. Once again, thankful to everybody who pulled up to the stream. If you made it to the end of the video, spam those H's. I know y'all are some real ones. I appreciate everybody who hit that sub button, everybody who's been with me the entire season, all the watch parties, all the VODs throughout the year. I appreciate it. I really do. And like I said at the very beginning of the video, a ton more content to come. Free agency, drafts, trades, got it all for you here on the channel. So make sure you hit that sub button and turn on those notifications.